Let's understand the Scrum Lifecycle. This is the graphical representation of an Agile project using Scrum. Starting at the left, you can see that the product owner owns the product backlog and in collaboration with the team develop the user stories or requirements for the project. The product backlog is prioritized with the higher priority items occupying the top of the product backlog. In collaboration with the product owner, the team decides how to group the user stories into releases based on the product roadmap. Once the release planning has been completed, the user stories are then selected for a sprint. The duration of the sprint is going to be 2 to 4 weeks. Once the sprint backlog has been determined, the team then disaggregate each user stories into tasks. During each sprint, the user stories are developed. As the code is written, it is integrated into the system and daily scrums are held. At the end of sprint, there is a sprint review with the working software demonstrated and presented to the customer for acceptance. The team then conducts sprint retrospective. During the retrospective, the team looks at the primarily three things: what went well, what did not go well, and what should be done differently. The team's velocity is then updated as the information radiator, which transparently display the status and the progress of the project, and then the cycle repeats itself until the project is complete. Sprint is an iteration in Scrum. At the beginning of the project, the Scrum team determines the duration of sprints for the project. Most sprints, they are gonna be 2 to 4 weeks in duration. Factors affecting sprint duration includes the stability of the product backlog. Once a sprint has begun, the duration never changes, nor are any user stories added or removed. Therefore, if many changes are expected, a shorter sprint duration will be best. However, the product backlog is relatively stable. A longer sprint duration will be appropriate. Overhead. There are overhead costs associated with each sprint. For example, every sprint's gonna have a sprint planning, sprint review, sprint retrospective. If a team has been able to lower this overhead cost by automated testing, continuous integration, etc., this cost can be absorbed more easily, making shorter sprints more desirable. However, if this overhead cost remains high, the team may use longer duration sprints. A team may be attempted to extend the duration of sprint and effort to hide their inefficiencies. Remember, Agile projects favor shorter duration sprints, and it is the Scrum Master's responsibility to coach and mentor the team so it can reduce waste, irregularities, and overuse and make the sprint shorter. The goal of the sprint is to deliver working software. At the conclusion of each sprint, the team should be able to deliver near releasable or potentially shippable software. Once the sprint duration is determined and the user stories are selected, neither the duration of the sprint nor any user story can be altered. The sprint will end at the appointed time, irrespective of whether the team has met the sprint goals or not. The product owner may choose to cancel or terminate a sprint in specific situations. For example, if significant change in priorities. Given that we are only talking about couple of weeks of work, the cancellation of a sprint would an extremely rare event. A sprint will begin with a sprint planning meeting and end with the sprint review and retrospective. There are three backlogs used in Scrum: the Product Backlog, the Release Backlog, and the Sprint Backlog. The Product Backlog is the master container of all the user stories for the project. The Product Backlog is continually groomed, prioritized so that maximum value is delivered to the customer. The Release Backlog is a subset of the Product Backlog that is planned to be delivered in coming release, typically a 3 to 6 months horizon. The Sprint Backlog is a list of tasks identified by Scrum team to be completed during the Scrum sprint. During the sprint planning meeting, the team selects some number of product backlog items, usually in the form of user stories, and identifies the tasks necessary to complete each user story. The product backlog contains the user stories for the entire project, and it is the responsibility of the product owner. User stories are features, functions, or requirements that deliver value to the customer. However, the product backlog will also have to contain technical or non-functional user stories necessary for the system to work properly. The product backlog may also include risk or defect related user stories. The product owner is responsible for keeping the product backlog current and up to date. This is accomplished by tuning the backlog, which is prioritizing and reprioritizing. The product backlog must also be continually groomed. This is the process of adding and removing user stories based on the needs and desires of the customer.